Hey guys, welcome to the first podcast of...
Oh, he's bowled it already.
Hey guys, welcome to the first MSC Performance Podcast of 2021. Today there is myself, Mark and Sonia. We're going to be doing an overview of 2020 from a training perspective. So we're going to be having a look at MSC as a club. We're going to be having a look at the trends in training and how the lockdown affected everyone's views on training and perceptions of kind of what they feel they need to be doing in terms of the gym and also outside of the gym. And then we're going to have a talk about 2021 and what we think the trends are going to be like and what's going to become bigger, what's going to become less popular. And yeah, just going to have a nice open discussion. So do you want to say hello, Mark and Sonia?
Yeah, hi guys. Good to be back on a podcast. It's been a little while, and Happy New Year to all those who we haven't seen since we've been closed. Yeah, looking forward to today's podcast, getting back into it, and some really interesting discussion points to go through. So yeah, let's get going.
At this point, we're pretty much exclusively making podcasts only during lockdowns when we've got more time available. But the intent is to try and make them a little bit more frequently. So if there's anything that you want us to cover, maybe Q&A topics or anything in particular you want us to delve in a little bit deeper, feel free to drop us a message or a comment via Instagram or via this YouTube video. Yeah, we want to try and get it a little bit more popular. We want to put more information out there that you might not get, or to elaborate a little bit more on stuff that we talk about a lot in our Q&A. So if there's anything that you want to talk about, yeah, please feel free to comment. So let's get stuck in first to MSC. We'll talk about 2020 first. So it's a very stop-start year, but do you want to talk us through, Mark, about 2020 as a whole?
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenging year for us as a gym. It's been, challenging for everybody, hasn't it? In different ways. And I think because of that, we try not to sort of put a strop on too much, and keep positive as best as we can with what's been going on. Luckily, we've got just such a brilliant membership base, such a great community. Who have kept us alive. So, there's been bits and pieces of help from the government, but that cash hasn't really touched the sides really. If all our members had packed in and cancelled their memberships, especially during that long lockdown last summer, then we wouldn't be here. We would be out of business. So it's been, despite being challenging, it's been character building and rewarding, if that's the right word, like just seeing that community coming together and sticking by us. We've had people drop off, of course we have, as any gym would, and it's been it's understandable. And in fairness, the few members that did leave messaged us and just said, look, because of this, because of that, being laid off from work or whatever, but everyone's been really supportive, and that's been amazing, really, and that's helped us, keep alive. So it's funny, we had a real strong start to the year, first 2 or 3 months, and obviously the lockdown came, good support from the members. We were fortunate we were in a position to lend out our kit to members to keep them strong. I think, Sonia Ben delivering a lot of great classes to keep everyone motivated and fit and strong. And then when we reopened, we had a big boom, to be honest. We had a great few months. Great to see everyone back, lots of new members, obviously adhering to all the rules and regulations. And then shut in November, that was a bit of a kick in the teeth, because that, slowed the momentum down. And then obviously open December, closed again. But, again, we're trying to stay positive and trying to move forward as best as we can. We've managed to still achieve a lot. During that first lockdown, especially, although we couldn't be open and deliver what we wanted to deliver, it was a real good opportunity for me as a director and us as a team to go away and, put our heads together and think, right, how can we make this even better? How can we provide an even better service? How can we make, MSC the best it can be? And I think, we did maximise that off period especially in that first lockdown, where we went away. We completely revamped and massively improved the barbell club that we were offering. developed a new app, developed a whole new system, new website. We did a lot of work in the gym to improve the aesthetics and, you know, the kind of, you know, the deep cleans, everything that we did to get as prepared as possible. So, you know, we've still, you know, managed to somehow move forward a little bit. We've managed to do a load of charity work as well, which has been amazing. So the strength of the community
seems so far away that we did the roll from Melbourne to Sydney. I forgot that was 2020 until we watched the documentary on Netflix. But that was crazy that was in January. And it's so easy to forget the amount of work that we did at the start of the year in terms of the charity work. But yeah, that was pretty cool.
That does seem like so long ago. This time last year, we decided to do a row from Sydney to Melbourne. Probably not realising quite how far.
And it was better than Ben's original idea of from London to Sydney.
Yeah, no,
it was ridiculous.
On his own, but I think it was amazing team effort by, you know, members were chipping in, and we managed to raise a couple of grand, I think, which was great.
Yeah.
I think Ben finished it off with a 50k row, didn't he, on the last? And we actually went slightly over the target. I think it was like 900 and something kilometers, and we ended up, you know, 1,000. So it was 1 million meters basically we made in the end. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think that kind of kick-started the year then with the lockdowns, like the focus on extra charity work, and I think in particular Ben being quite creative with everything, starting with the marathon in the garden, which I don't think Naima was too happy about because of the state of the grass after, but that was pretty cool.
Literally like it's a modest sized garden, isn't it? Like square, and literally just running around in a square for 26 miles. But for those of you who follow us, you'll know Ben's a bit of a lunatic with that kind of stuff. But as you say, Luke, like it's certain things have had to be put on hold. But I think again, it's that trying to be as positive as possible and think, right, what can we do? You know, and what we were able to do in that 3 or 4 months we were locked down was develop the business to make our product even better for members when we reopened. And then also a load of charity work. It's like, right, okay, we can't do this and that, but we've got, you know, a couple hundred people here who, you know, we can try and do something to help others. So that was pretty cool.
Sonia, how have you found it from like the perspective of coaching, like in terms of like your PT and your weightlifting coaching? How have you found like having to adapt everything for like home sessions and having to be reactive to whatever the government say? How have you found it?
I think that like it kind of puts everyone into position where in the first lockdown, people started to focus on the different aspects, like usually the things we normally kind of all neglect in the gym. So I think like at the beginning, everyone was kind of like pretty chilled about it. Like, I'm going to do something else in the meantime. Like, I'm going to go for a run. You know, it was during summer. So I think people were training outside, outdoor in the garden. So I think the panic wasn't there that much as then happened in November and now. Whereas like, I know, let's say from the powerlifting perspective, like people kind of got a lot of kits for their like garage gym and stuff. But for the weightlifting perspective, from my point of view, I think it could have been a bit of a struggle, especially for those who were just new into it. Like, I think the athletes, like GB athletes, probably still have some sort of access to gym, or they have home set up as well. So I don't think they're struggling that much. And obviously British weightlifting kept doing the online thing, like online competition. But yeah, I think like we just had to adapt to something completely new. I think it was a big push for like online thing, online business, online coaching. So I think it also gave you something positive out of everything.
I agree with what you said there in terms of like the first lockdown. Everyone was like quite almost like use it as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to try and make myself feel as bulletproof and as injury free as we can. And I think the first podcast we did, Mark, talked about how this was going to be a blessing in disguise, where people were going to come away feeling much better, fitter, got rid of any niggles, and then absolutely attack the final half of the year, which didn't quite materialize. But one thing we're going to talk about in terms of like 2021 later on is that at one point it seemed that everyone was going to move away from like feeling like the need to train at gyms, and that almost gyms were going to be in trouble from everyone getting so much out of the home sessions.
Yeah.
Then I think through the second and now the third lockdown, I don't know how you found it, Sonia, but like motivation wise from clients is definitely dropping each time. And I think people are starting to realize that, yeah. And while you can definitely train from home, and it can be quite novel to begin with, that nothing beats the environment of training in these gyms. And I think that's definitely been something that's happened from the first lockdown compared to the third, is that people are absolutely like ready to get back to gyms and start training hard, and nothing quite replaces having a full access to a gym.
I think the online platform kind of strengthened the community even more, because like we had to keep in touch in like virtual reality, isn't it? And then like now everyone's kind of demanding the environment. Like it's not just the same doing a class in your kitchen or your living room, especially with those who work from home. Like they do everything in 1 or 2 rooms. So we hoping, or what I'm hearing is probably everyone's demanding the gym, like actual gym kit.
100%. Even people that have like really good kit at home, like are still struggling motivation wise. Like I've got a couple of clients that have got like a full gym, like I've literally got everything, and I haven't trained. And it's nothing to do with the lack of equipment. It's just to do with not having the environment, and almost that routine of going to the gym. Like you said, if you working, eating, sleeping in the same like room or two, trying to then train in that same room is so difficult compared to having the routine of packing your gym bag, eating something before the gym, and actually going there. The routine just isn't there, and people are really struggling with it. So I think that there's definitely going to be a massive push to getting back into gyms and thriving in the environment versus training at home, which was quite enjoyable, I think, to begin with. And the novelty was there, but definitely worn out pretty quick.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think like just the feedback we got from people as well, and like you could just see it online on social media and stuff, that first month back in the summer, like there's almost like a bit of a buzz from it, like, oh, this is pretty cool, and train at home, especially for, I noticed with a lot of your powerlifters as well, was like, right, a bit of a break from barbell work, let's do some accessories, let's give ourselves a bit of a different stimulus. But that seemed to wear off pretty quick. The novelty wore off. It's certainly gone now, I think, and I think it went in the first month or two of summer, to be honest.
I think that, so we was going to speak about trends in 2021, and one of the big things that we think is going to happen is a shift away from specificity. In terms of everything from like general populations, instead of being boxed into doing these like specific lifts, from powerlifters doing SPD all the time, weightlifters just doing like very Bulgarian-esque style training. We think that there's going to be a shift away from like specificity. And do you think it's been influenced by home sessions, or I guess that like just doing exclusively, split squat iso holds and hamstring curls is very tedious, but do you think that people, the reason that there is going to be this shift away from specificity is because of some of the home sessions, like you can take certain aspects away from it?
I think people probably realize that if we talk about powerlifting, I think they kind of maybe enjoy that as well, and maybe boosted their training a little bit, like actually realizing that I can probably a bit fitter with doing maybe some accessories, which, if you're a powerlifter, you probably work around SBD. I think like people maybe realize,
whoa, we sometimes do our accessories as Tilka Clover.
Like rotational work with med ball. No, I think people are willing to try new things, and I think they genuinely realize like maybe I should walk a bit more, and like maybe they realize where their fitness actually stands. Where I think at the beginning of the first lockdown, they realized that they can't really do anything else, or they maybe weren't that fit. If you know what I'm trying to say, like, 100%. I think people like myself adapted quickly, because I was like, well, I'm just going to do this and it's completely fine. when maybe some people were like, okay, I don't have a barbell and weight, what I'm going to do now?
I think it'll make people less scared to come. You know, we spoke about it last summer, Luke, when we reopened, we were quite surprised how quickly people got it back.
Yeah,
especially powerlifters and weightlifters. And I think they'll, you know, I mean, it's probably I think we spoke about it, like the first time that for powerlifters, you've probably gone a month or 2 months, like 3 months without programming in squat, bench, deadlift, and the same with the Olympic lifters, and the same with rugby players as well. Like, you know, the first time you haven't had a big pull in there, you haven't had a big trap bar or a big deadlift or whatever. And then you realise that, you know, okay, we don't want to go too far that way and say, right, we don't, you know, moving forward, we can program with, you know, without 3 months of the year, without, you know, those big specific movements. But I think we've realised now, and probably, you know, we could probably say as a powerlifter, right, okay, that, you know, after your big main comp of the year, there's no drama in doing 4 weeks, possibly 6-8 weeks of just, you know, having a bit of a break from the barbell. Or obviously it's very individual, it depends on skill level, etc. With weightlifters as well, like, you know, okay, we've done the British or whatever, we can actually have 4 weeks of just good general prep work, and we're not going to lose a lot. Whereas before, that was probably never ever tested from a coaching point of view. Like, I'd never coached an Olympic lifter where there wasn't snatch, clean, jerk in the program all around, you know, and like variants of, obviously, hangs and powers and stuff. But and imagine with Luke is probably the same with, you know, coaching powerlifters, and for me coaching rugby players. You'd never have a month of like not at least doing a little bit of specificity. But I think we've probably realised now that, you know, it's not going to kill you. It's probably actually, you know, let's say a month. You know, let's generalise and say a month a year. You know, or 2, you know, one month every 6 months, we can actually have a bit of a break from those main lifts. Be a bit more all round, do a bit more conditioning work, build up a bit, you know, a bit of volume accumulation or aerobic base or whatever, and it'll actually come back and transfer quite nicely.
Yeah, I think when you talk about like the home sessions, like we all know that they're not the most optimal in terms of like long-term training, but like if you look at the trends from it, like you said, the people that were disciplined and carried on doing 3-4 sessions a week, even with very minimal equipment, they came back to the gym, and then within like 3-4 months they were hitting like all-time PBs. I'm not saying that that's the most optimal way, but maybe somewhere in the middle where we're doing a lot more variations further out, coming away completely from the competition lifts. And I think there's definitely like a sweet spot in the middle where, like you said, we're coming away from the specific movements that we're trying to get better at, and looking at like long-term trends rather than these short-term, which I think we've all done in the past, where we just look exclusively at short-term trends versus looking at the longer-term picture. And I think that now that we're like doing a month away from doing a clean and jerk and doing like variations of that, or doing variations of the squat that may be more focused towards like technical issues, like you said, Mark, or potentially more about like driving hypertrophy, looking at that long-term pattern, like 3-4 months down the line, might have a really good positive effect. So I don't think we're ever going to train exclusively like we had to in lockdown, but taking those key points away and adding more variability in terms of like trying to drive a specific adaptation is definitely going to be the future of 2021, I think.
I think that's the same with anything in fitness. I think we covered this on one of our other podcasts. Is, you know, the saying, "Don't throw the baby out of the bathwater" type thing. You know, don't go completely
big time.
Use common sense. You know, stick with routes you know, but you know, learn from these bits, but then don't go all in one way or all the other.
I think we spoke a little bit about like probably the reason why these extremes work is just because the novel stimuluses again. So if you've done a period of time of just doing like singles a certain way, like an 8 RPE was the massive one. It's just a novel stimulus, and you get this mad return on it. And then another trend comes in, and then you phase into that, and it's novel again, so you make more gains. But ultimately, I think in terms of longevity, the sweet spot is definitely somewhere in the middle. So looking at like these exercises to drive hypertrophy or to drive like technical issues is going to be better long term than just hammering the same lift over and over again. And that variability can be massive from like a psychological perspective as well, of just keeping you motivated to get into the gym. And after a while of training, you'll know as well, Sonia, from like weightlifting, just it's slow progress, but if you can just switch in a new exercise and start to see some good progress on that, from a mentality perspective, that can be really positive as well. And the belief that you're going to make gains is huge.
I think that's something we spoke about in terms of like that, you know, let's say if you have a pull-up variation or a chin-up variation, like if one doesn't suit you, you don't have to do it. Like just pick things which actually suit you and you can make them better. Or like for the squat, or just, you know, like as you're saying, the mental side of the aspect, like people probably realize these things, and I think that's going to be the big change. We're trying to kind of implement it in the barbell club as well, like giving people more options, like variation of choice, preference.
Yeah, I think like you know, we talked specifically about like powerlifting, weightlifting. We'll talk about like team sports in a second, but from a general perspective, yeah, the big thing I think is going to be like more options within a specific movement archetype, where before it would have been like we maybe would have got majority of people doing a deadlift. There's definitely now a lot more flexibility in what movement people are going to be selecting. Like you said, for deadlift, we've got people doing trap bar, Romanian deadlift, normal deadlift. The squat is the bigger one. A lot of people just cannot get into a good high bar or low bar back squat position. So we've got people using the SSB, we've got people doing front squats, goblet squats, belt squat, leg press, something that fits within that archetype, and not just pushing everyone into this specific movement just because people feel that they have to do this movement. We get a lot of people that come in just like general populations that think they have to squat, not quite understanding that we've got the movement archetype of a squat, but there's so many options that we can choose between for general populations, when you might want to get stronger, you might want to get fitter, but your actual goal isn't to get good at the low bar back squat. It could just be, I need to get stronger.
I think with...
And that's why they need the gym and the coaches and the programs to kind of get the advice, because as you said, like people are misled, like basically they think they have to squat and they see a powerlifter doing a squat, so they want to do it the same way. But obviously some people would never get to a certain weight unless they actually make this squat stronger doing different variations. So yeah, that's the whole new era, hopefully.
Was
you going to say something, Mark?
Yeah, just I mean, it's just to emphasize that point really of like the variations and stuff. And it's like you're right about, you know, for example, like you are going to get that occasional person that the back squat just isn't quite working for, whether it's high bar or low bar, and rather than trying to sort of shoehorn that movement in and, you know, spend half your life rolling around on the grass on the foam roller and doing mobility stuff and trying to force something that just isn't quite natural, you know, are you better off using a variation, loading it, getting some volume through it, etc., etc. You know, I think, you know, I used to be quite like that training myself, to be honest, like really trying to force, you know, a good high bar back squat where it's probably not, you know, 6'3" and femurs.
I'll never forget your low bar attempt. That you tried to low bar for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, rugby shoulders. Yeah, rugby shoulders didn't like that too. But you know, it's actually like you don't necessarily need to do that specific movement. You know, load it up for a slightly different pattern, a slightly different variation that suits your body type more, and get on with it. You know, get on with.
It's a moving target as well. So like to begin with, it might be a case of like you can't get into a good high bar, low bar squat. Let's get you on the belt squat. Let's get you on the SSB. Let's drive some adaptation. And then we might see like different changes in both strength in terms of movement qualities. And then later down the line, it's something that you can potentially pursue as you've created the adaptation, your movement quality has improved, your strength and stability has improved. Now we can try the low bar squat, but it's not pigeonhole it into this one movement, like we said. So I think that is really, go on.
Without going off on too much of a tangent with this, but like, yeah, I think that's one of the keys, isn't it? Is saying, right, okay, let's say you've got that 6'3" rugby player or whatever. Let's load the belt squat, or let's load the box squat, whatever. Let's, you know, get a volume through it. Let's load it. So we're building strength, we're accumulating volume, we're getting the neural stimulus. But, you know, perhaps with your accessory work, that's where you grab a kettlebell and do a deep goblet squat with your heels elevated. or, you know, whatever it is, you kind of get as much bang for your buck out of the big movements as possible that suit you as an individual, and then sort of plug away on the side of that on perhaps those little loaded mobility, you know, drills to try and work towards that. And like I say, along with, you know, if I'm loading the belt squat up, you know, over time I'm going to be gradually improving my, you know, my patterns and my you know, my depth and my strength in those deeper positions anyway. And then, you know, you maybe at the end of that session you're doing your adductor work or your goblet squat, or you're throwing in the odd mobility drill, and then you come back to, you know, saying, right, okay, well, you know, let's try and, you know, I'm still doing my loaded belt squat, but I'm going to start with an empty bar on the high bar, and I'm gradually going to build that up, and then potentially that's in a position there to overtake and become your new movement. And if it's not, then it doesn't matter. It's okay.
So looking at the variability within training from like a powerlifting perspective, we spoke about like coming away from these movement archetypes and looking at like longer term trends, which I think is definitely the next step forward. And I think looking at it from a perspective, I like to program into GPP blocks and SPP, so general physical preparedness and specific. And people call it different things. Like the big thing at the minute is a hypertrophy block and a strength block. It's the same kind of idea, but a general block can look different for two different people. So for someone that's already highly skilled and highly developed, like we spoke about, Mark, it might be more like hypertrophy driven. So currently my training program looks like doing a low amount of like the competition list. We're talking like 1 or 2 sets, and then driving hypertrophy through more variation of exercises, which offers like novelty, offers good progression week for week, which never happens now. I've been training a long time. But most importantly, offers like full range of motion movements, and developing hypertrophy. We know that the best thing to do is going through like a bigger range as we can. So an example is like going deadlift into stiff leg deadlift or Romanian deadlift. So I think that's a big one. And then looking at it from a perspective of someone that might be a little bit newer and hasn't quite developed the skill of someone that's a bit more seasoned, spending that kind of general phase working different variations that are based around driving the adaptation of improving the skill. So lots of tempo work, lots of pause work, and then maybe using machines to drive hypertrophy as well is definitely the way that I think that's going to keep progressing, rather than just saying you want to be good at squat, just do squat all the time. I think that adding this extra variation is going to be the big trend in 2021 from a powerlifting perspective. From a rugby perspective, we spoke a little bit about like you've never had this amount of time in your 37 years of life to train for rugby. So what have you saw that's different, both with like, obviously you're going to be a little bit more directly with your S&C than some of your teammates at Bourneville, but like what have you noticed like with this extra training? What are people doing with the time, and is there some kind of different focus from a team sport perspective that you're seeing?
I mean, the interesting thing here is the time. That is the kind of key word here. Is like normally, you know, you finish up the season around April. You might even be playing some county stuff in the summer and some Severn stuff in the summer, and then you generally, from my experience, I could say you probably get about 4 weeks off. 4-week off season, and then you're back to pre-season. So over the years, the time that you have off has been getting less and less and less, and the season's been getting longer and longer and longer. People have been linking that to, you know, to higher injury rates and all this kind of stuff. It's really hard because you sort of think, you know, from an S&C point of view, your off season, you know, is your big chance to get some gains, for lack of a better word. But 4 weeks isn't a lot of time to implement those changes. Even when you get back to pre-season, you're normally getting absolutely flogged, you know, 2 or 3 times a week down the club, you know, with, you know, an insane amount of running volume and things like that. So it can be really hard to squeeze in everything that you need to do. And then all of a sudden, it's like the complete opposite. It's just like a ridiculously long off season, essentially. So, you know, but at the same time, it is difficult when people have had lack of access to gyms. But essentially, what you're doing is you're looking to, you know, essentially as vertical integration as it always is. But you are, you know, similar to yourself, I think, Luke. Just, you know, you're prioritizing perhaps, different elements as you go along. So for me, during the majority of what we're doing has been, a big emphasis on hypertrophy. And alongside that has been maintaining strength, maintaining a bit of speed, maintaining maybe a bit of an aerobic base, maybe letting that slip off a little bit. So that it's been a real good opportunity to do your accessory work, do your hypertrophy work, real good variety of exercise selection, different, unilateral work, different planes of movement, etc., etc. So the big focus so far has been that, and accumulating volume and like I said, doing some of the things you don't get time for. So trying to make yourself as bulletproof as possible. With your strength work, it's a real good opportunity to hit 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, that sort of stuff, and really drilling in technique. So again, going back to what we were talking about previously with squat technique, pulling technique, etc., there's been a good opportunity to actually say, well, let's actually spend a bit of time. If we hit almost the hypertrophy stuff hard, and then the strength stuff could be slightly obviously sub-maximal percentages, but developing the skill quite a bit. And also with the speed and plyometric work, it's a good opportunity to, do I need to be going flat out at the moment? Do I need to be doing, advanced plyometrics? Probably not. I just want to maintain a bit of a stimulus at the moment. But it's a good opportunity to, with your jumps, sticking your landings, doing some lateral bounds, doing a lot of sprint technique work and things like that. And then gradually that will build towards, we'll sort of slowly come out of this hypertrophy phase and into a big strength block. And the luxury is it could be, we don't know how long it's going to be, which makes it difficult. But, I'd say it's going to be at least an 8 or a 12 week, strength focused block. And again, vertical integration, we're doing everything. So, we're going to transfer into that, into that heavier stuff. And it's absolutely unheard of to have 12 weeks with no games to recover from, with no, training, field-based training to come from to build up that strength. But obviously it's difficult with gyms closed at the moment. So people are going to have to do what they can, but that's where the isometric can come in, the, yielding ISOs and things like that. And then generally speaking, you'd come, build that strength, and then you would, when we start to get a bit of a clue as to what's going on, you'd just transfer over to more of your rate of force development stuff, your power stuff, and then your speed and plyos. So it's almost like it's not to be confused with old school block periodization, but it's vertical integration. You're keeping everything, but you're just changing the priorities as you go. But it's been a fantastic opportunity to do the corrective work, real slow, steady aerobic work. Don't need to be doing necessarily mass type aerobic stuff or broncos or real hard aerobic stuff. Has been a good opportunity to say, right, just do a bit of steady work, tempo if you want to push to that.
Would you say that similar to the powerlifting and rugby, where we've said about people finding this sweet spot? Do you think that now moving into when you get back a chance to get into your rugby training, that the coaches, if you've come in, and I know not everyone's going to have been really disciplined with the training and people will find it hard and might not have had the equipment you have, but do you think there'll be this kind of slight shift into integrating more traditional S&C? Because I think it's safe to say England, in terms of the semi-professional and below levels, is probably behind in terms of strength and conditioning. But do you think if everyone comes back in good shape, everyone's strong, injury-free, and able to tolerate more of the traditional rugby training, do you think there'll be a shift in terms of the direction that they take the training?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think S&C and management of players is going to be as important as ever as we gradually get closer towards pre-season and games. You're going to have, I think, again, we're at a semi-pro level. You're going to have, like I say, at that level, an amateur level, you're going to have some guys who have had access to a bit of kit and have trained probably better than ever because they've had the time and the recovery. You can have some guys who haven't quite been motivated and done a lot. And that's with kind of conditioning, like the aerobic side of things, and also the strength side of things. So you're going to have guys coming back with, all sorts of different levels, I think, which is going to make the management of players and the build up towards the season harder than ever. I mean, if let's say we play our first game, let's say we have some pre-season games in August, that's going to be well over a year since anyone's done any contact training. And then if you imagine some blokes won't have even done any strength work, it's going to be real steady. So I really hope clubs get the right advice, but also just a real steady return to play protocol. Do you know what I mean? Like even go in rugby, attend, what it's like. You've seen the rugby guys train down the gym in terms of conditioning work. It's very old school. It's like, right, gasser.
Suicides,
you got to be blowing. Whereas hopefully now it's like, can you imagine like blokes who haven't done any running for 12 months or limited, and then they're going in and doing, broncho tests and suicides and stuff. And it's, we're looking, to, for blokes dying and puking all over the place. So hopefully...
Can I come and watch the first training session?
You can't watch anything, mate, with your record.
I want to watch it.
You've been to watch...
I want to see some 130 kilo boys where I'm running gases that haven't done anything for a year.
That's your man to watch. He's going to be in the hurt locker after this break. But we've watched 7 games and we've lost 7 times that you've come to watch. Even last season, we'd won every game until... what was it, about February or something like that, and Luke comes to watch his first game of the season, we get dipped. But they might, so like hopefully there's a real slow, like holistic approach where like there's a bit of build up before we do the aerobic stuff, and we're not just smashing the shit out of each other, which is normally how it would go.
I guess the last point that I want to touch on, I guess it links as well to rugby players, but I'll ask you this, Sonia, is that I think another good shift is, like you touched on earlier about people not having access to gyms, but being in control more of like their step counts, their nutrition. I think the step counts has been massive last year, and I think that's going to be going to continue to trend that way. And I think more people are getting fit watches and Fitbits and etc. Are going to be more in control of stuff outside of the gym. Do you think that's going to continue to be the case?
Definitely. I think people kind of got into, as you said, the fit watches and stuff, and like now they're more in charge of their daily activity, because that was something they were left with. Or I think like that was what was mostly recommended, like at least try to keep active as much as you can. So a lot of walking, running. So I think this was a good boost, and I think it will be utilized later on as well, definitely. But the future of the gyms can be replaced, because we know that that's necessary, and people still want it and hoping they will want more.
I think from like a PT perspective, we've talked about this before, Mark, about when we worked in like commercial gyms, that people would be sat down at a desk all day, and then they'd come and do a session, and they'd sit down and we talk about like the importance of actually standing up. And I think now that's just gone into this next level now, where it's like, well, you're only training 3-4 times a week, which is fantastic, but you need to complement it with stuff outside of the gym. And we've always known this, but I think now it's been taken to this next level where it's like, right, you're training 3-4 times a week, fantastic. However, you need to be doing this to make sure that it complements your training and to get as much out of it as you can. And it's not as good enough just to train 3-4 times a week. We need to put a bit more emphasis on stuff outside of the gym. And I think that people being a bit more aware of their daily activity and finding other ways to be active rather than just at home is massive. And I think that will continue. And I think it's going to be a big positive when we get back to normal full training, which we know is the best thing to be doing.
100%. I think we were talking about this, 10, 11 years ago, weren't we? As pioneers of strength conditioning. We were talking about it 10 years ago, saying like, you got these, as you said, these guys sat at the desk all day. They come in, do an hour.
Spin was the big one. They sat down at a desk like this, and then they got on the spin bar like this.
Exactly.
One plane.
But now it's definitely more like popularised. People are more aware of it now. I think with the all your goons walking around with your watches and stuff like that.
Not bad.
Yeah, so all you Garmin wankers. People are more aware, and like you say, yeah, I've got a couple of guys who perhaps looking for weight loss, and it's like, right, you're doing. I mean, this is when gyms are open, even when gyms are closed, he's saying, right, twice a week you're going to do your strength work, where we're going to make you as strong as possible, so that you can absorb the forces of everyday life and all the benefits that I won't bang on about now about strength training. But a couple of those a week, and then but it's outside of that where you've got to move, and you can have 2 great gym sessions a week, but if you're doing 1,000 steps a day, or you're not active, you're sat at the desk all day, then you're going to run into some problems. So I think as coaches, we've got to take responsibility for. You're not a life coach, but you've got to take responsibility for setting perhaps those targets, keeping in touch with your guys during the week as well. Was obviously something we try and do in the barbell club. What we do very, very successfully in the barbell club is, right, you're doing those sessions in the gym, that's great. What are you doing during the week? What's your step count? How active are you? Et cetera. And it's, it is about that consistency. It's not sitting on your ass for 4 days and then coming in and doing a Metcon. And then go back to sit on your ass for 4 days.
And I think that's going to be a very individual thing, because people are going to take it differently, but just the awareness that how much it adds up to actually doing activity outside the gym, and just understanding now that doing 2 sessions a week and then spending the rest. We know that doing your sessions, then eating and drinking is not going to be good for you. But now knowing that, if your diet's fantastic, but you're training twice a week, you also need to complement this. And I think it's going to be an individual thing on how so some people respond really well to having a daily target. Some people it's a chase, rather than giving them a number, just saying go for a 10-minute walk once or twice a day. Everyone's going to have an individual target, but rather than it just being sort your nutrition out, get your training sessions in, it's definitely now going to be more of a whole, looking at things from a whole. So your daily activity versus your nutrition, your drinking, your sleeping is a massive one as well, which links into the Fitbits and the Garmin. Looking at things from a whole perspective rather than your individual training is going to be the big thing as well.
I couldn't agree more. And that's coaching, isn't it? Essentially, It's that's what separates the good coaches from the bad, I think, or a large part of it is that individualization. And with, example with the barbell club, where we're working off a set program, and there are. I say a set program. There's lots of variations, isn't there? With we might be doing
individual variations,
knee, hip, push, pull, carry, but there's different variations of movement. But it's not only that. It's obviously we do the week. We're doing the check-ins during the week and whatnot, and it's different for everyone. Like you say, some people, it's just right. Here's a weekly target for steps. Here's some people it might be right. Here's a daily target. As you say, same with nutrition as well. Is actually right, do we necessarily have to straight away be giving daily calorie targets and macros, or can we just say, right, this is something new, what we need to do is just for a month just track, let's see where you're at, and then it might be right, let's aim for a weekly average, then we can maybe move forward. But people react.
Some people, it might not even be macros. It might be a case of, right, okay, eat a piece of fruit with 2 or 3 of your meals, mentioning no names, Graham. But there's different ways to give people a target depending on how they respond. Looking for things that are bigger.
All the vegetables.
That's
eat all the veg.
That's where good coaches come to the fore, I think, and you're not just following a program online.
A set rope.
5-2 diet or whatever diet fad is out there. It's finding what works for you,
for the individual.
Yeah.
So there we go. There's going to be more variability in training. People aren't going to be fitted into one box. We're going to be seeing people doing different movements within the archetypes. We're going to see more of a focus on stuff outside of the gym, and a lot of that has come down from the lockdown. So it's not all doom and gloom. We've learned a lot, and I think once the gyms open back up, we're going to be thriving, and we're going to have learned a lot, and we're going to find that sweet spot of how we can progress our training on the best. I think we're going to wrap it up there. We wanted to talk a little bit about velocity training as well, something I've been using, but we'll save that for a blog. So Sonia's just written a blog on weightlifting shoes, so feel free to check that out if you want some extra reading during lockdown. So if you head to the MSC website and then go to blogs, You've got all the back catalogue, but the latest one by Sonia is a good read as well. So feel free to check that out. We'll be doing another podcast next week. So if there's anything that you want us to cover, please do give us a shout. And yeah, we'll wrap it up there. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Decent.